In this film, I'll be speaking about gravity and weight in relation to piano playing. However, I'm going to be stressing what I believe is a rather different point of view compared to the standard one, which is most commonly spoken of. Now, the most obvious role of weight is as an accelerator, as an energy source for moving the key. I'll start by showing an example of this very obvious approach. There's a film of Gilels playing Rachmaninoff, where he does very pronounced movement on the octaves. So that's certainly a good example of how we can indeed use the weight of the arm to help with the acceleration of the key. It's very good for voicing in that example. However, what I want to talk about particularly is examples where we don't have all this time available. There you've got ages to drop the weight of the arm down. Not a problem when there's plenty of time. You can essentially charge the potential energy, drop it in. You've got time to kill. If we play fast, it's a very different situation. So I'm going to look at a couple of other examples as well. The Chopin Black Keys study, a good example of fast finger work. I'll just play a little bit. Or if we have very fast chords, this is an example from Liszt in Valet de Obermann. Anyway, so I'm not just going to look at advanced examples, I'll also look at very slow scales. But these are especially relevant because at this point, if our best explanation is arm weight, as I said, as an accelerator, as a way of generating the energy to move the keys, unfortunately, this is basically on a par with flat earth theories. Scientifically, there's no prospect of this whatsoever. So I'll give you some very simple practical demonstrations of this. I won't go deep into the science. But say firstly, just take a small object. I'm going to use a little clothes peg here. If I take that on the piano, I'm going to try and drop it up and down as fast as I can. Pick it up and drop it. I mean, it takes a bit of coordination to even get anything out of this. Not easy. But I mean, I'm sure you can hear the rhythm there. How does that compare with? Not even close. So we need a much more sophisticated explanation. Now, I don't want to go to the other extreme personally and say that the Chopin example and the Liszt example have nothing to do with the weight of the arm, because that's going too far the other way. I don't want to go into either extreme. I'm going to show you a very different role of the arm's weight. What I'll be talking about is using the weight of the arm not to create acceleration, not to send energy to cause the key to move. It's a much less direct role. So essentially the role it still plays in these instances is not to accelerate, but rather to slow the response to moving the key and to provide stabilisation. If we understand the importance of this role, we have something far more sophisticated, and we don't have to change the model that much to make it rationally credible. I think if we all understood how you can use weight in a different way, we'd have so much of an easier time understanding what we need to do to create the best practical results. So first, let's go back to the Rachmaninoff actually. As I said, it's not entirely different to the other examples, although we're using the acceleration from the drop with gravity. If I just drop, that's horrible when it lands. And in summary, we need up forces and down forces. So the precursor is when we lift up high. We start by dropping. For me, the really important part that most of us tend to fail to talk about is not the drop, it's how we land the drop. And that's up forces that we need to generate. If all I do is fall, now the piano, it's not anything like a trampoline. Very often we hear people speak of this kind of analogy. And if we work well, we can make the piano seem like a trampoline. However, it's not. Firstly, if I just drop onto a dead surface, doesn't feel terribly nice. It's not hugely dangerous, maybe, but it's not a pleasant feeling. In the same way, if you jump off a bridge or something and hit the ground, it's not as extreme as that, but you have impact when you land. It's not actually a very nice thing. The piano works not like a trampoline, more like a crash mat, let's say, to some degree. There's some absorbency if we just fall into the key, but that's actually not very good at all. I'll show you the difference between just falling. That's all about the down, very easy to generate down forces. The up forces, this time I have to create the up force, and my hand has to generate the up force. Now it feels effortless. So essentially, it's the balance between down forces and up forces which gives us real balance, real ease. The problem with the up forces, we have to be able to make them happen. As I say, the piano is nothing like a trampoline. If I just fall on it, I don't get the bounce. With a trampoline, all you have to do is fall over, you'll bounce back out. But of course, what you can do on a trampoline, if you want to bounce high, is you push into the trampoline with the legs as you land, and you generate a bigger bounce. That's what we have to do on the piano, to even land safely at all, really. Not to necessarily do the big rebound like this, but it's like a sort of small-scale rebound, essentially. So the way I would practice this initially is literally to do that. Start from the key, generate an up force. Now the arm can't do the one we need here. The arm can push through like that. This can be a valid technique, but this is not the up force we're looking for right now. We're looking for one that just pushes you straight back out. Essentially, if we frame this in terms of the weight of the arm to some degree still, the weight of the arm is going to start down already. Hopefully the hand is pushing back to some degree in the first place. It's not sunk under that. And obviously the key is not moved, so that weight cannot be excessive. It's not much at all. Otherwise, of course, the key is going to move. So start from there and knock yourself back away. This is a ridiculous extreme. The opposite extreme is just to fall in and just land down hard. And then the one we need, if we're going to drop into the keys, is just enough of that push back to generate something to balance on. Now, if we relate this back to walking, it's a really good way of understanding this idea of balancing up and down together, not focusing on just one thing. I mean, down forces, they're so easy to generate, to be honest. Actually, if I just show on the piano briefly first, before I go back on the lid. So, a very common mistake people make is they just kind of poke at the keys really gently with the fingers, very cautiously. Very typical of beginner pianists, that they're almost kind of scared of the piano. We have to free them up. If we just say rest the weight of the arm on the fingers, the problem is, do they have something to rest on? That's the first question you have to ask. If you just fall into those fingers, okay, maybe this kind of thing, it's going to do some sense of freeing up. Because if you're just locked and you poke at the fingers, that's certainly not a good result. But what we need the arm to do is not to just become heavy. We need the arm to become responsive to the up forces. If we don't have any up forces, we have no basis to truly release the arm. If I just slump like this, it's not pleasant because we just land too hard. We get squashed under the down forces. And of course we're going to want to back off if we feel squashed by the weight of the arm. Of course they want to back off. So in a funny kind of way, the excess restriction of weight is almost the same thing as being too heavy. Because if you start too heavy with nothing to support that in the hand, of course you want to back off. So it can easily be that what we think of as not being enough weight started from too much, with no up forces. That was the real problem. So a really good pianist playing an arpeggio will have plenty of finger movement. The hand opens on these up forces. That gives you something for the arm to connect to. I cannot recreate that by just slumping weight on my hand. In fact, I don't feel nicely connected at all. My shoulder's actually working much harder when my hand is slumped. I can't just rest down if I don't have a point of support. It's the balance of the two forces together. So if we talk about walking, if you picture a toddler when they're trying to stand up for the first time, there's nothing hard about putting downward forces into the ground. Anyone can do that. Just fall over, you've got a big down force. No problem at all. What's hard about learning to stand up is to generate the up force and then to balance on the up force by sustaining that. The up and the down work together. The weight is down, we push the weight up. The weight kind of slows the growth maybe, and then once we've found our balance, we can just stay in that balance. It's the same thing in walking. We don't look to put a weight down. That's not how it goes at all. It's the blend of the up and the down together. So the next leg goes out, you touch the floor gently, you make sure you can generate an up force over it. You've got something to balance on. You can put the weight into that leg. If you just think, put the weight down, we would just slump, we would collapse. Nothing healthy about that at all. So really, I personally stress the up forces far more than these down forces. We have to get the two things working together. But I honestly don't think it's that difficult to rest into something if we concentrate on the up forces more first. I'm totally in favour, however, if we have a beginner playing a scale, say, let's come to a very easy example. If we want them to learn to be free, so supposing they're just poking their fingers, the arm is completely unresponsive, not good at all. Good idea maybe, just drop the arm through each one. Here I am using some arm acceleration, note by note. Perfectly real. But what happens when you play fast? As I showed before with the clothes peg, you can't do that quickly. If we think it's weight when we go fast, because weight isn't fast enough to make that happen, there's a really strong chance we're just juddering the arm and shoving into those. And that's a completely different issue to weight. So that's going to get very strenuous. So what happens really, we've got to have the connection of the weight into the finger on the surface. We've got to be able to push off. And as you can see, then my arm responds to that. What we need is the response, not this big slump. That's just the way of freeing things. Becoming responsive starts off from being free enough to fall down. However, just falling down is not responsive. If I just fall down and stay down there, my arm is completely unresponsive due to the heaviness. In almost exactly the same way, if I hold it up and I'm not willing to respond, or if I'm weighing into the fingers and not willing to respond, basically the same problem. It's no different really. The good version, if we do want to just slump down first, is when we say, yeah, I can slump down, but now, when a finger makes the key move, my arm slows down the response. I'll show you with the other hand, the bridge of the knuckles should rise here when we do that. And the arm just gently slows that down. So if that can't happen at all, no response, that's not good. If it happens too easily when we play, yeah, maybe we could get stuck up here. That's not good. So really what the weight of the arm is doing in most of these situations is not making the key move. It's just making sure that when the finger takes the key confidently, instead of ending up ridiculously high up here, the weight of the arm is just a kind of partial sense of slowing that. Not fighting it, letting it happen, but slowing it down. So as the finger stands, the arm gently resists that in a very subtle, very easy fashion. That's what happens in the Chopin example I gave before. If I play a bit of that again, slowly now, my arm is responding around the fingers. If I try to take weight literally in a slow tempo, maybe useful, maybe rotation or weight, however you look at it, if I just literally drop on each one, or if I kind of rotate, use the arm energy in a more active way through rotation. Either way, that's not going to work at speed. What we're going to get at speed is the fingers take the keys, and either the arm is responsive or it's not. So again, if the arm is held, it's just not going to work. The fingers can't move freely. Everything is disconnected. If the arm is heavy, it's kind of the same thing potentially. It doesn't really change anything because we're stuck. You have to be able to take the key with a confident movement and then feel that becomes a point of support. Same as in walking. You don't put the foot on the floor and think, yeah, I can relax that now. You put the foot on the floor and you stand up around that foot. So if I think as soon as I produce sound, I'm done, it's not going to work. We have to take the key with confidence and we have to be able to carry on in some fashion. And that's where the weight is meaningful. We don't have to try to be heavy. We just have to have enough sense of the feeling of the weight of the arm to slow that without fighting it in a big way. So all the way through, that's what's going on. That's how the arm stays nicely balanced in the keys, because it's just releasing in balance with the up forces the fingers generate by moving the keys. Everything is very neatly balanced together. So same thing again, going back to the list example, fast chords. Now, a lot of people may find this very surprising, but it really is, for me, chiefly the hand movement is the most important part of this. I'm not going to say we can't use active arm energy. And actually, if I start off, maybe on this one I can have a little bit of a drop on that one, a bit of active arm acceleration through gravity. But the continuation is chiefly a vibration of the hand. In fact, one of the easiest mistakes to make, where people will look at the surface and say, yeah, you clearly need much more arm weight to move the keys. Very often this kind of thing might happen. Really what's happening though is my arms are pushing too hard, and that gets me stuck up here really quickly. Of course, if I'm stuck up here, then the weight's going to bring me back down again and reset me. But if I think, oh yeah, move them by the weight of the arm, you just have to have this bigger, ungainly movement. So it's not really the weight moving the keys. We just have to learn to feel the weight enough to get into this nice neutral. Then if the fingers are the main mover, they generate up forces. We can go too far with those up forces. But even when it's the hand, we can get stuck up here. So again, it's not exactly a fight against the up forces. We accept them. And if we accept them into a loose arm, we largely absorb them. And there'll just be a very gentle rise of the arm. The thrust will take you right up here. That's no good. It's just a very subtle version. So maybe the wrist is slightly drifting as it takes place. But that's fine. We're just absorbing it with the arm. Eventually, once you've got a certain distance, it just finds a nice equilibrium. It doesn't thrust all the way over and get truly trapped. So I hope that clarifies a lot of things there about this alternative role of weight. For me, this is by far the most important one and by far the least spoken of. If we don't have up forces, and we have to generate them in the hand, remember, if we don't have these up forces, we have nothing to rest on meaningfully. All we can do is hold back, get this horrible disconnect between hand and arm. Or we can just generically rest down, get this horrible feeling of being stuck at this end and not even that free at the shoulder end. It's a very odd thing, but honestly, when the hand slumps like this, it's actually less free at that end too. It's only when the hand is free to do this part here, to grow in here, the arm subtly slows it, it doesn't fight it. Then I really feel my arm has entered a great balance too. And it's not heavy at either end. This end is not pushed down at all, certainly like it would be if the arm thrusts. But even if the arm just rests, that's quite an unpleasant slump. Far more pressure than when I grow back out of it. And the shoulder is far freer too. So do try some of these exercises based on, originally, make sure the arm is mobile, this sort of thing. But then recognise what we have to generate through the hand actions. Don't fight it in the arm. Don't think my arm is supposed to be really heavy. Just learn to free it and then be responsive as soon as it's free. Stand up, open up with the arm around those fingers, and you should get a really nice join.